Some of the things we'll be talking about over the course of the next 2 hours on the program, governor, the president, although if he were a governor, he might be a lot less threatening. That is, if you lived in that state, of course, you might see it otherwise. President is on his way to Oregon today. He's going there apparently to politicize the shooting that took place 1 week ago in Roseburg, or outside of Roseburg, at a community college, and we'll have some discussion on that a little later in the program. Also, before we wrap up the program today, there was a forum attended by most of the candidates running for Twin Falls City Council. One of them couldn't be there. That was Rebecca Mills-Soyka because of a prior commitment. But the majority of them had a view on a particular issue that's been vexing this community for the last 6 months, but just one said, no, wait a minute, hold on, we better think this through. We'll talk about that a little later in the program as well. But first, top story today happens to be that situation going on in the United States House of Representatives, which I don't know about you. I got thinking about this morning. I had an email from a friend. He thinks it's just some sort of great distraction so something else can go on in the background while we're watching all of the play-by-play of this big fight going on inside the U.S. Capitol building and under that dome that's currently going through repairs. I have to tell you something. There may be some truth to that, but I see it a little differently. In all of the major world revolutions that have taken place over the last 250 years, so we go back to the French Revolution and even to some extent the American Revolution, you had a lot of people who came forward and said, "Well, look, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. What we want to do is just have a few changes around here, and let's see how that works." And in France, an interim government came in and took over, and they were willing to work with a king, etc. In the United States, there were a lot of people who said, well, we can still work with Britain, but we want a bit more representation in all of this. In Russia, in 1917, a government came in, and it was a socialist government, not a communist government, not completely communist. And what happened in all of these situations, these initial overtures simply didn't work. And then eventually there was radical revolution that took place. Now, there have probably been a lot of those things that happened and they were false starts. No radical revolution followed them. And I'm guessing that's what's going to happen in the United States. On the other hand, this country is like a tinderbox right now with the disgust that the average American has with the way government's been operating. And it's been that way my entire life. I was a little boy sitting around listening to my dad and his buddies talk. Or I would go down to the coffee shop with my mother and listen to my mom and her friends talk. These are not people who believe things were getting better. And that was 50 years ago and 40 years ago. And then I heard it 30 years ago as I was just getting out into the work world following college. And I heard it 20 years ago when I was out doing man-on-the-street interviews. I've been doing talk radio most of the last 15 years, and believe me, I've been hearing a lot of it. I think something is going on here, and this is just the beginning. This is actually quite mild. The media is going to trump it up because they want some ratings out of it. Blow that horn as loudly as they can and say, hey, this is terrible. Look at this. Look at what these radical Republicans are doing. This is just terrible. They're not liberals, so therefore they're bad. This is bad, bad, bad. Watch this. I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't think that these people are all that radical when you think back to some of those other revolutions that took place around the world. They're just simply saying government is spending us into the poorhouse. And that's been the argument pretty much over the last 35 years in this country from American conservatives. Oh, okay, going back over 50 years if you want to look at Barry Goldwater back in the early 1960s. But the real the ascendance of conservatism really took place in 1980 with the election of Ronald Reagan. And then there's been this tug of war going on back and forth between the various big spenders and the people who say, no, this is too much, this is too much. It's been going on for decades. So we have the situation, I think, that could, and I don't think it's likely to happen, but it could. This could be, you could have some people take over in some sort of interim capacity in the House. But I still think that there's a real revolution coming in the House of Representatives because that group, that Freedom Caucus, which numbers 40 people, there's also a Tea Party caucus and some others involved too as well. But the absolute number of, really strict conservative constitutionalists in the House of Representatives is small. The overwhelming number of Republicans are your get-along, go-along guys. But we're going to go through another election cycle next year, and I could see where that could change greatly we could add perhaps another 20 or 40 of that group. And if that group gets some power and gets into the leadership, eventually I think they're going to bring a lot of those other people with them. Newsmax. Have you ever read Newsmax? They even have a TV station. I think it's number 349 if you have DirecTV. I used to watch the Steve Malzberg program there, and they did a lot of great documentaries about legendary American conservatives. Newsmax has a magazine, and they also have a daily email, and the daily email came out last night. 7 potential speakers of the House of Representatives. And I was taking a look at this, and one name really stood out. Now, and again, you talk about long shots, I think it is. But in this type of volatile situation, really anything could happen. They list a fellow by the name of Tom Price. He's from Georgia. They list Paul Ryan. Ryan is really the choice of the establishment, and we keep hearing he'll be acceptable to conservatives. That's what the establishment says. He'll be acceptable to conservatives, except conservatives are backing Daniel Webster from Florida. Jim Jordan, a Republican from Ohio. Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers. She is from Washington State. Webster is mentioned here, number 5. Number 6, Representative Pete Roskam. He's from Illinois. And then number 7, Representative Raul Labrador, Republican of Idaho. And the writer says, now in his 3rd term, former state legislator Labrador is best known for his work on immigration issues, a sharp critic of Boehner and other House leaders. He made a long, short challenge to McCarthy for leader last year when the majority leader Eric Cantor of Virginia quit after losing renomination. If elected to any leadership position, Labrador would be the first GOP House leader of Puerto Rican heritage and the first Mormon to be in leadership. So there's some speculation. Now, The Hill, which is a newspaper based on, well, it's not based on Capitol Hill, but they cover events going on, the Capitol and the like, that's out of Washington. A much more establishment insider publication had its list of 7 today, and Labrador isn't on it. But once more, there you go. You've got the conservatives who are saying this is a possibility, and then you've got the establishment, which doesn't even see the conservatives as being a factor, even though the conservatives have driven us to this point. Now, some of you may know this. This is a little quirk of the Constitution. You don't have to be a member of Congress to be the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Constitution doesn't say anything about that. Doesn't say that's prohibited. So this exchange took place yesterday. You would have heard it if you were listening to Sean Hannity yesterday afternoon right here on News Radio 1310 KLIX or online at newsradio1310.com. Newt Gingrich, a guest of Hannity's, and Hannity kept pressing him with a question, would you do it? Would you come back and become the Speaker?
Would you consider, if nominated, being the interim Speaker?
Look, I can't quite imagine the circumstance. Because remember the McCarthy problem. It's not getting a majority of the conference. It's getting 218 votes. I mean, if you were to say to me, 218 guys...
Why are you laughing at my idea? This is a serious proposal.
No, I'm not laughing at it. I'm saying to you, I'm trying to be totally honest with you. If you were to say to me, 218 guys have called you up and given you their pledge. Obviously, no citizen, could ever turn down that kind of challenge. This is why George Washington came out of retirement, because there are moments you can't avoid. What I would say, which would be more practical, is if the House Republican Conference wanted me to be in a position to sit down with them and talk with them and try to help them think this through, I think this is a conference-wide problem. I don't think this is a personality problem. I think this is something which requires serious historic thought, because I think that we are, as you point out just in the polling data, we haven't seen this level of alienation. Gallup reports that 75% of the American people believe there is widespread corruption in government. Widespread's a big word.
But
we need to understand 25% of the American people would think that a military coup is okay. This is a serious, I think, sobering period in American history.
Did you hear what he said there at the end? 25% of the American people believe a military coup would be okay. And actually, I have some friends who served in the military. I'm not asking any of them who currently do, because I don't think that I know they would know the danger of going on record if they ever were to endorse something like that. But I have friends who serve, have retired in many cases from the military, and a lot of them believe, and they're telling me that they think at this point the only thing that could put this government back together, all the king's horses and all the king's men, right? they believe would be some sort of military coup. In fact, one of them was telling me the story about a book that he read back in the 1970s, and it's a fictional account of a general called out of retirement. There is a coup. He serves for 2 years as president, then he retires and goes off fishing in Minnesota after restoring constitutional government in the United States. The dangerous part of that is somebody could get in charge and suddenly say, hey, this is pretty comfortable. Why have a constitution whatsoever? Then again, most Americans are quite happy with allowing the president to run the country by fiat, that is, as a divine right monarch, making decisions left and right that pretty much skirt the Constitution or ignore that. 817, Bill Colley with you. Well, we don't teach civics in school any longer. Maybe that's the reason. Most people don't know that's not how it's supposed to work. 817, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Our telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. All of this has come about because Kevin McCarthy, who was the majority leader, was expected to become the next speaker. But these 40 in the conservative group, the Freedom Caucus, balked at supporting him. And then it was leaked that perhaps he is having an affair with one of his colleagues in the House, Republican Renee Elmers. She is from North Carolina. Now, she's been in, and she just got her seat squeaked by getting that seat about 5 years ago, because she was running against a Democrat who got caught on tape grabbing some kid around the throat on the streets outside the Capitol, screaming, "Who are you? Who are you?" And it looked really bad. So she ended up squeaking by and getting elected. The rumor is she's having an affair with Mr. McCarthy. The two of them deny it. But the latest twist in all of this, Department of Homeland Security. Do you know what an IP address is? If you have internet service at your home or your business, everyone has an IP address. It identifies you. It's like your address on your house, like having the numbers nailed up on the railing on your porch or the column on your porch. That IP address it tells people where a message comes from. Someone at the Department of Homeland Security rewrote Renee Elmer's Wikipedia biography yesterday and said she was being accused of having an affair with McCarthy. Now there is an investigation going on at the DHS, which is, of course, a cabinet position, a cabinet office, and it's run by Democrats. They're trying to find out now who at this time was on a work computer and rewrote Elmer's biography to suggest this. So, friends, this is a soap opera that is spinning wildly out of control at this point. And that's why I think someone could come out who is a dark horse candidate, someone even like a Raul Labrador, again, not likely, but could emerge from all of this and end up running the show. It's 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Great country we live in, huh? Economy maybe circling the toilet or the drain, if you like a nicer analogy. And then we've got all of this going on in Washington. All of these are signs that there is really something wrong in the good old USA. We've got more details on all of this coming up in a few minutes as well. Also some threats of war as well.